What's going on, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? It is bracket challenge time. As you can see behind me, we're going to be doing the live bracket breakdown in this video, so let's get saucing. What's going on, YouTube? As I just mentioned, we are going to be doing a live bracket breakdown here on the channel. My name is Matt, and thank you so much for watching this episode of The Sauce. I'm very excited. NHL playoff hockey is here, and as you can see, currently hockey is ongoing. It is the 15th of May. Let me zoom out there. So time stopped there, but you can see that, I can scroll here. Yeah, there you go. I can scroll there. That way nobody thinks it's a screenshot of any sorts. The first game between Boston and Washington is tonight at a couple hours here, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so this video is all about breaking down each division matchup. So without further ado, let's get saucing. All right, so as customary on this channel, we begin with the North Division. So let's move over here. Got my pink, red pen marker thing. Anyway, so starting off with the North Division, we have Toronto at number 1, Montreal at number 4, Edmonton at number 2, and Winnipeg at number 3. So the first round matchup for the North Division doesn't start till actually Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I believe. So it's gonna be a while before we see any of these matchups. But let's go ahead and break these down, shall we? So in the Scotia North Division, I completely forgot that there were sponsors behind all of these, but in the Scotia North Division, Toronto and Montreal. Toronto has been in first place the entire season. In the regular season matchup, Toronto won 7-2 games. So Toronto took it to Montreal this year, and I don't think that's going to change in the playoffs. Well, I do love Montreal. I do love an underdog story. I love a lot of the grit that some of the players of Montreal have, and I love some of their young stars. I like that Brendan Gallagher's going to be back healthy. I think Carey Price can steal them a couple games. But all in all, I think the offensive firepower and the veteran depth that they added with Joe Thornton and Wayne Simmons and Jason Spezza, who's been on the team, but still is just another veteran presence on that Toronto front. I just think Toronto's going to overwhelm Montreal here, and I think they're going to win it in 6 games. So we'll go ahead and do that there. All right, and the second matchup for the North Division is going to be Edmonton and Winnipeg. So similar to Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton has won 7 of the 9 games these two teams played. So Edmonton has a better 7-2 series lead over Winnipeg during the regular season. I know I mentioned that in the last video that regular season matchups don't really account for much in the playoffs, but I think in this case it will. As I've said, the biggest problem for me is Winnipeg's defense. I think similar to how Carey Price can steal a couple games for Montreal, Connor Hellebuyck's going to do that for Winnipeg. But that offensive firepower, just like Toronto, with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, I don't think Winnipeg is going to be able to respond to that. I think it's great that Nikolai Ehlers will be back in the lineup for Winnipeg. I think that's going to help them win a couple games. Heck, they may even push it to 7, but I don't really see that happening. I think similar to Toronto-Montreal, this one's going to go 6 games as well, but overall it's going to go to Edmonton. So let's go ahead and do that here. There you go, the first round matchups thus far are set. I'm going to move on to the next division, and we'll get back to the semifinals at the end of all 4 divisions. All right, moving on to the Honda West Division. Number 1, Colorado. They also won the President's Trophy. They beat Vegas in their last regular season matchup and then won their last games. So Colorado with 82 points is the President's Trophy winner. Even though Vegas has the exact same point total, hey, they beat them in the last game, so they get the President's Trophy. So number 1, Colorado, number 4, St. Louis, number 2, Vegas, number 3, Minnesota. Both of these matchups had a similar 5-3 regular season matchup. Colorado won 5 of the 8 regular season matchup against St. Louis, and I think Colorado really is just, they're going to run away with this one. I think Jordan Binnington, similar to the North Division goalies, is going to steal a couple games away from Colorado. My big concern here is the health of Colorado's goaltending, which I said in one of my earlier videos. Colorado just needs to stay healthy, goaltenders and all, and I think they can have a deep playoff run. I see Jordan Binnington, again, similar to the North Division teams, getting 1-2 games, but I think Colorado wins this in 6. All right, the number 2, number 3 matchup Vegas, Minnesota. Now, I said Minnesota is my team to watch out for, team I really wouldn't want to play other than the two powerhouses in Vegas and Colorado. Minnesota actually took it to Vegas 5-3 in their regular season matchup. Surprised? So was I. Minnesota actually won a lot of those really close games, which is huge in the playoffs. And I think this series is going to go the distance. I think it's going to be one of the more exciting, fun matchups to watch. I'll get into my favorite one later. I'm sure you can already guess which one it is. But Vegas, Minnesota, I think that one's going to go the distance. But ultimately, I think Vegas is going to overwhelm this Minnesota team in that last game. Vegas is going to take this in 7 games. They have the best goaltending tandem in the NHL. Their scoring depth is amazing. Their defensive core is stellar, and I think it's going to be too much for the Thrill, Kirill Kaprizov, and the Minnesota Wild. It's just, Minnesota's been a fun team to watch. I just don't see them taking out Vegas. So, okay, moving on to the Discover Central Division. So you had the number 1 Carolina versus the number 4 Nashville. You had the number 2 Florida versus the number 3 Tampa Bay. And this one was interesting. So Carolina versus Nashville. Carolina wins the regular season series 6-2. Florida beats Tampa Bay in the regular season series 5-3. So starting off with the Carolina-Nashville series, I love the tenacity the Nashville showed in their last couple of games, but Carolina rested some players, and I don't know. The Nashville that I would like to see is the Nashville that made it to the playoffs. I think it was 2017 and took it to the Chicago Blackhawks and swept them in the first round. That's the Nashville I want to see to make this series interesting, tough, but ultimately I think this is going to go to Carolina. They're a strong team. They've had some really good playoff outings in the past couple of seasons. Their offense looks great. Their defense they can skate the puck in. They're offensive, defensive. Their goaltending is solid. They have a 3-headed monster, as I mentioned in the last video. I think Nashville can maybe take a game or two, but again, I think ultimately Carolina is going to win this series pretty decisively. Number 2, Florida versus number 3, Tampa Bay. This is the series I'm most excited and most nervous about. Yes, Tampa is the defending Stanley Cup champions. However, Florida is the team I did not want to play in the first round of this Stanley Cup playoffs. I would rather Carolina or Nashville or anybody else in the Central other than Florida. And I'm nervous about this one. I'm not going to lie. I know Florida's without their top defenseman, Aaron Ekblad. Tampa, the last couple games of their regular season series, was without, Victor Hedman, who's going to need surgery in the offseason, so he's playing through injury. Barclay Goodrow, Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, who are all going to be back for the start of the playoffs, so that's good news, but we didn't look good in a lot of those regular season matchups. Florida, I think, is the team that just has our number. I do want to say that this is great for the NHL. This has been a rivalry that the NHL has been really trying to push together. It's an in-state rivalry, and this is the first time they're meeting in the NHL playoffs. So this is going to be electric. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I don't know. Ultimately, I'm going to say this goes the distance. I'll start there. I know it's going to go 7 games. Goaltending is my biggest question mark with Florida. However, with Tampa, my biggest question is defense. We brought in Savard at the trade deadline. He hasn't looked good. Ruda can't seem to stay healthy. Victor Hedman's playing with an injury. I really don't know. And the deadline moves that Florida made at the trade deadline, I already said that, are showing to be awesome. Awesome acquisitions. Guys like Nikita Gusev is starting to heat up. This is a tough one. But ultimately, I'm going to say the run for a second Stanley Cup stops here, and Florida wins in 7 games. Boy, does that hurt. Okay, so that one stung a little bit, but we're moving on to the East Division. So starting off with number 1 Pittsburgh, number 4 New York Islanders, number 2 Washington, number 3 Boston. So Pittsburgh, New York Islanders. Pittsburgh took it to the Islanders this year, 6-2 in the regular season matchup, Whereas Boston and Washington tied at 4 games apiece, and that starts tonight. So, Pittsburgh and the New York Islanders. Pittsburgh is the hottest team in the East at the moment. Let me rephrase that. Boston's the hottest team in the East. Pittsburgh, though, is definitely heating up. The New York Islanders, the trade deadline moves just didn't seem to pan out. They have a very deep lineup, but they just can't get scoring going. They can stop people from scoring, or at least keep games close, and they have probably one of the best goaltending tandems in the league, with Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. They're both doing phenomenal. But this Pittsburgh team that I thought would miss the playoffs, with the defense they have, is somehow relevant and doing very, very well. I think Pittsburgh wins this series pretty decisively. I think all the games are going to be close. I think the Islanders are going to really challenge the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think they're going to push them to the brink. The Islanders had a great run last season. I think a Barry Trotz coached team knows how to push the other team to the brink. When I first thought about doing this, I was going to say 5-6 games. I'm actually going to say 7 here. I think the New York Islanders can at least keep every game close, but ultimately, Pittsburgh's going to win that series in 7 games. Okay, and the last matchup of the starting matchups, Washington and Boston, which again starts tonight, so that's very exciting. I love the storyline of Zdeno Chara going up against his former team. Boston doesn't have Big Z. It's just so good. They don't have him back there to mess with the Washington Capitals. Boston doesn't have Torrey Krug. He's on St. Louis now. So even though, similar to Pittsburgh, I counted them out in the regular season, this Boston team is just such a strong team. They have one of the best penalty kills. They are the hottest team coming into the offseason, I think, or postseason, and they're more than just a first line now with the addition of Taylor Hall, who's probably the best trade deadline acquisition. So I think the series is going to go 7 games. I think the big boys in Washington, with the addition of Anthony Mantha, Tom Wilson doing Tom Wilson things, and then a healthy Alexander Ovechkin, and TJ Oshie also heating up in his last games, I think this is going to be a hard-fought series. Whoever comes out of the East Division is going to have a tough time against anybody else because they're going to be so beaten up. But I think it goes 7 games, and I'm going to say Washington. I thought about this for a long time, and I just think Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals find a way to get it done. I think the losses of Big Z and Torrey Krug are going to be too much on the back end for Boston, and I think the Washington Capitals are just going to punish them in this grueling 7-game series. It's not going to be easy for either team, but it gives us another Ovi versus Crosby matchup, which, these 3 teams, I think, are on the cusp of some of their last big Stanley Cup pushes with these guys in their lineup. We'll see how it goes, but Ovi versus Crosby for the upteenth time in the playoffs, so we'll see how that goes. All right, so we're into the second round. Now, how this is going to work, let's move over here for a moment. So how this is going to work is you have the next round of matchups. There's going to be one winner from each division. Then there's going to be a reseeding based on regular season points. So we're going to try to go through this relatively quickly because even though, yes, they have the regular season matchups, the big part of it is this first round because we don't know what injuries take place between the first and second round. So a lot of this is a guessing game. It's hard to decide. I'm not going to really go into the games played, mention them, but really won't get too much into that. But let's get into the second round matchup, shall we? Let's get started with the North Division. So Toronto versus Edmonton, Matthews versus McDavid, Marner versus Draisaitl. Can the Edmonton Oilers get into this Stanley Cup final? Can the Toronto Maple Leafs get past the first round of the playoffs and get to a Stanley Cup final? Will Joe Thornton get his first Stanley Cup? There's a lot of great storylines within this North Division. It's a shame that, ultimately it's going to come down to one Canadian team with a chance to win the Stanley Cup. But, hey, this is how this format's working. It's going to be an exciting matchup. this is where I say the goaltending is going to let down one of these two teams. We know they can score. The defense has been a surprise for the Edmonton Oilers. The Toronto defense has been shored up in the offseason. There's a lot of grit and depth in the Toronto Maple Leafs lineup. I think Toronto takes this one. I think it's either going to go 6 or 7 games, but I think, I don't know, I think just Toronto's gonna beat Edmonton. I know I've put Edmonton on the bottom and underestimated them this season, but Toronto's just too good of a team. If they don't make it past the first round, if they don't get, I'd be shocked if they don't make it into this Final Four and possibly contend for the Stanley Cup. We'll see, but Toronto beats Edmonton in at least, I'm going to say, 6 games. Okay, so moving back to the West Division. Now we have Colorado-Vegas, the matchup that everyone wants to see. A matchup that in any other season could have been the Western Conference Final. This is going to be amazing. I don't know what happens in this first round, but this is going to be an intense, high-powered matchup. I'm just super excited about this. And both teams have a high-octane offense. Both teams have amazing talent on the blue line. The goaltending has been stellar all season long. But ultimately, I'm going with Vegas on this one. And I think it takes them another 7 games. It doesn't matter who's in net for me in Vegas' case, because no matter who's in net, Vegas just is a stellar team, top to bottom. I think Colorado, yes, could make a deep playoff run, but just thinking about this over and over again, Vegas just, in my book, has the edge, and I think they win this in 7 games. Going back to the Central Division, so you have Carolina and Florida. You know, I said this earlier in the year. One of my best friends is a Florida Panthers fan, and I said there's kind of a triangle going on with these top 3 teams, and it has been all season long. Tampa seems to have Carolina's number, Carolina seems to have Florida's number, and Florida seems to have Tampa Bay's number. And because of the way I set up that matchup, I think the same is just going to transition into the playoffs. I know the trade deadline acquisitions for Florida look great. I just think Carolina is just a stronger team. I think Florida is going to beat them with speed. I think Carolina is just more of a well-rounded team. I think goaltending, Carolina has the edge, even though Florida has shown that these 3 goalies that they have, similar to the 3 goalies that Carolina has, have been great, especially down this home stretch. But Carolina's goalies, I feel like, have been more consistent. I definitely give the edge in defense to Carolina versus Florida. The offense, I want to say I'd give that to Florida, mainly because of the speed and creativity that Florida shows. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring series over here. I think this one's going to go 6 games, and Carolina's going to take that home. And the last one, going back to Ovi versus Crosby again. The last time these two met in the playoffs, Ovechkin finally wins his Stanley Cup. And I gotta say, if this happens, this is gonna be an exciting matchup to watch. Man, this would be amazing. I'd love to see this if it happens. I mean, as you've seen, I've been wrong in my series predictions, my division predictions, so this could go completely wrong. But it's exciting to do nonetheless. And I really want to bet on Ovechkin to beat Crosby again for a chance at a second cup. Ovechkin has recently come out saying that he's excited to get into the playoffs, contend for another cup, and then sign an extension with the Capitals. This is the first year in 16 seasons in the NHL that Ovechkin has not scored 30 goals. He was injured for the last week and a half, I want to say, of the playoffs, or of the regular season, excuse me. So he didn't get to that 30-goal mark, but he's going to be healthy for the playoffs. I think Washington's a bigger, badder team than the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think it's going to be easy. I would love to see it go 7 games, and I think ultimately Washington is going to win this matchup. My big question mark for Washington is who's in net. Is Ilya Samsonov going to be healthy for the playoffs? He was on COVID protocol, or is it going to be Vita Vanacek? Because if it's Vita Vanacek, I would give the edge to Pittsburgh. And then for Pittsburgh, that goaltending has proven me wrong, as has their defense, similar to Edmonton. But similar to what I said with Toronto and Edmonton, I think the Washington Capitals are going to win this series in 7 games. And now the reseeding begins. All right, we're almost there. It's a long video, I know, so I apologize for that. But just look at it. Look how exciting this is. We have Vegas, Washington, 1 versus 4. A rematch of the Stanley Cup in Vegas's first season, where Washington won in 5 games. And then you have Toronto and Carolina, number 2 versus number 3. This is insane. Normally, this would be 3 Eastern teams and 1 Western team. So Vegas is holding down the fort for the Western Division or Western Conference. I don't know how that's going to shape out with the Prince of Wales Trophy for the East and the Clarence Campbell for the West. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they even going to hand them out? I really have no idea. Anyway, NHL playoffs. If my bracket goes according to this, you have number 1 Vegas, number 4 Washington, number 2 Carolina, number 3 Toronto. Let's dissect this rematch first, shall we? 1 versus 4. So Vegas has the highest standings of the remaining 4 teams, so they would play the lowest standing Washington. Vegas will have played 2 Game 7s if this is how I have it. If it shakes out like this, they would have played 2 Game 7s versus Washington, who's also played 2 Game 7s. I think this rematch would be amazing to see. The storylines would be great, and I think Vegas wins the rematch of the Stanley Cup in their first amazing run when they joined the league. I think Vegas would win this in a 6-game series. Washington beat them in 5, takes Vegas 1 more game, but I think Vegas gets it in 6. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the offseason after a matchup like that, but Vegas moves on to their Stanley Cup again. In the 4 years they've been a team? So much success from this Vegas team. I have no idea if Seattle will be able to repeat that. So the number 2 Carolina Hurricanes versus the number 3 Toronto Maple Leafs. This is going to be another exciting matchup. Not as exciting as the, rematch of the Stanley Cup of a few years ago, but exciting nonetheless. Toronto has a chance to represent Canada in the Stanley Cup final. Carolina has been great in the past couple of seasons in the playoffs. They didn't have to face Boston to get here, which is great for them. So now they have a chance at playing Toronto and see if they can get to that Stanley Cup final. Strong, well-coached team by Rod Brindamore, former Stanley Cup champion with the Carolina Hurricanes in 2006. 3-headed monster in net. Exciting Swiss Army knife of a blue line, both offensive and defensively. Toronto Maple Leafs, high-octane offense. The leading goal scorer in Austin Matthews. And, Mitch Marner, the hungry veterans that have not won their first Stanley Cup yet. You have Freddie Anderson coming back healthy for the playoffs. Jack Campbell's been awesome in his absence. So this is a tough matchup. And I really don't know who to go with on this one. My gut tells me to pick Carolina if this is the matchup. But I think that the high-octane offense matched with the veteran presence in Toronto is going to catapult them into the Stanley Cup, which is going to be incredibly exciting for the city of Toronto and all of their fans who have just had loss after loss in the playoffs, especially to Boston, but they don't have to play Boston to get here. So similar to Carolina, they didn't have to play Boston. But I think Toronto and Vegas are going to meet head-to-head in the Stanley Cup final. And the headlines on that and the pressure on the Toronto Maple Leafs would be unbelievable. I almost forgot to mention the amount of games I think it would take. I think I touched on a little bit with Vegas and Washington taking 6, but I don't think I mentioned it with Toronto and Carolina. I think it also goes 6 games. I think both of these matchups are going to be tough. So 6 games I think would be fair. I don't think it quite goes the distance, but 6 games nonetheless. So we have Vegas and Toronto in my Stanley Cup final. Goaltending, I give the advantage to Vegas. Defense, I give the advantage to Vegas. Offense, I give the advantage to Toronto. 2 out of 3. Okay, that says that I'm saying Vegas would win the Stanley Cup final. Let's slow down a little bit. There's more to this matchup than the items that I've just mentioned. Who's healthy? Who's injured? I think Toronto has a lot more forward depth than Vegas does. Therefore, it gives them a lot more combinations with their lineup. Defense-wise, Toronto has developed more of a shutdown defense in the offseason, acquiring, depth moves like Zach Bogosian, Zach Muzzin's healthy. So I think that's going to factor into this as well. But Vegas has more of a offensive, defensive outlook. I really think this is going to come down to goaltending. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Vegas has the best goaltending tandem in the NHL. And I think Vegas is going to become the quickest expansion franchise to win their Stanley Cup. I believe this is their 4th year in the league. And I think ultimately, Vegas wins this Stanley Cup in 6 games. I know my bracket's all over the place. I can tell you, honestly, this is not the first bracket I've done. This is not the original matchups that I had set. I have overthought this a million times over, but I did this live, and Vegas is going to be my Stanley Cup champion for the 2021 year. I know as my wife is editing this video, she is super excited because I've given Vegas so much crap in my other videos, but I just see Vegas winning this year. Last year I had Tampa versus Dallas in my bracket. How they got there was a little wrong, but it was Tampa and Dallas nonetheless, so we'll see if I'm right here. I said that it was going to be Vegas and Columbus at the beginning of last season because I didn't know how the divisions would shake out. Well, Columbus ain't here, so 1 out of 2. And I still think, Central didn't get there. Instead, I have the North getting there against Vegas, so Vegas wins in 6, 2021 Stanley Cup champions. So I think that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Again, this is going to be the last of the stats for a while. I want to record this video before the playoffs got underway, so by the time you're watching this video, some of these playoff matchups have already started. Maybe we'll release this video early. We're not quite sure yet. But if you're watching this on a Thursday afternoon, morning, evening, whenever you're watching it, this is my official 2021 NHL playoffs bracket. It has been concluded. I just realized I never mentioned the East sponsor, Mass Mutual East. But that's not important. We're done here. Moving on. So, finishing up this video, here you have my NHL 2021 playoff bracket. Said that a million times over. Again, I'm sure my wife is going to be very excited that I have Vegas winning the Stanley Cup. We'll see if that actually comes into fruition. If this happens, it's unfortunate if the Lightning don't repeat, but hey, that's the nature of the sport, and I'm just super excited NHL playoff hockey is here, so we'll see if it pans out. Just remember, make sure you like this video, click subscribe if you're not already subscribed, leave a comment on what you think the bracket's going to look like. Who do you have winning the Stanley Cup? What picks of mine do you disagree or agree with? Let me know. Also, make sure you check out the other videos on the main channel for the Slice of Life. And again, thank you so much for watching. Stay saucy.